Good afternoon and welcome to Lunchtimeseries with me, Kevin Britz, proudly powered by leadershipbydesign.co, leading the charge with insights, information, and ultimately effective results. Joining me in today's marketing and leadership segment, marketing and communications expert and co-host Craig Pagely. How are you doing, Craig?
Kevin, I'm great, thank you. Yeah, good to be chatting again. And firstly, you've had a birthday this week, so happy birthday again. Hope you're feeling strong. I know you were feeling a bit loose at one stage, but I'm sure a good celebration put that to bed.
Yeah, if it sounds a bit congested, I apologize in advance. But yes, thank you. It's been an interesting week and an interesting couple of days, and my friend actually said to me, she doesn't call it getting older, she calls it leveling up. I was like, yeah, I'm like reaching a new level.
That's great.
I'm officially leveling up.
Oh, that's fantastic. Do you take time for contemplation, reflection, and things like that when you go from one year to the next?
I do, and I use my birthday as a big significant kind of milestone of, like, compared to where I was last year. Like, what have you done? What have you achieved? How much have you done? And reflecting on it yesterday was it was just amazing. It was amazing to kind of relook at my life and go, I'm pretty chuffed with what I've done and what I've achieved. I mean, the book came out. We've launched programs that we'd never launched before. You and I have a project in the works,
In the making, yeah.
in the making. And the show. I mean, the show has been. You and I haven't missed a session, one single. No, come hell or high water. Besides the short holiday breaks, the lunchtime series just carries on relentlessly.
Yeah, that's so true. And Kevin, in 2 weeks' time, it's 150 shows. Do you know that?
Wow. It's amazing, Craig. Yeah, and like when I don't see you, I'm kind of going, there's something missing in the week. It's like, oh, I haven't seen Craig yet.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's brilliant. Yeah, I must admit, birthdays for me are also that time of reflection. But the one thing that I have done quite a bit pre-COVID, because travel was a lot freer and easier, and I was doing some good international work then, as well as I often take a week off and travel to an international destination on my own, and just take my camera and go and explore the cities that appeal to me. So hopefully I can get to do another one of those this year. Croatia is definitely high up on my bucket list. So it's a great time of the year in Europe as well, when my birthday happens. So yeah, bring it on.
Absolutely. Craig, so getting back to the conversation, like from last week, we had a really interesting conversation. But what are we going to discuss in the show today?
Yeah, Kevin, thanks. We're gonna after our chat on growth hacker marketing last week, I wanted to dial in to the conversation a bit more and get some really deep insights into a very interesting report that I came across on fastcompany.com, and the article was in Fast Company, and they had a link to this report, and the article was published to Fast Company, was titled "Exclusive: Consumers Are Putting Themselves First," and that really jumped out at me, because more and more conversations I'm having, and more the articles and posts I'm reading is really a bit of me the whole time, and this report really starts unpacking this particular proposition. But what stands out for me is the fact that this concept flies in the face so much, that the younger generations have been bleating on about so many things for so long, but their concept of collective seems not to apply today. And there's a big switch around in that. So yeah, really looking forward to unpacking that and trying to get to understand what is driving these. And the report I'm referencing is titled "Exclusive: Consumers Are Putting Themselves First." It is written by Stephanie Mehta and published on the Modern CEO blog section of fastcompany.com on the 11th of March this year. So a brand new piece of research and report findings that's being delivered. And the article it covers an in-depth analysis of what's actually driving buyer behavior these days, Kevin.
Yeah, it's it's a weird, when I saw this, I was like, that's a bit of a weird concept. So I'm waiting for us to unpack it.
Yes, and really, it's very much around the concept of value. The one measure that everything is measured by is around this concept of value, and understanding what people value has always been an important part of what makes the world go round. But it's because what people care about, what they feel is important, and what they believe in or desire consciously or subconsciously is also what they'll spend more effort and good money on. And those are the important things for brands to understand. But the same rules apply if you want people to work for you, Kevin, if you want them to vote for you, invest in you, or otherwise meaningfully engage with you. You've got to ensure that you know what they value, and just as importantly, what they don't, because you could be pushing the wrong levers of value to a particular segment of society, and they're going to turn away from a brand. So, economists, analysts, academics, researchers all measure and calculate value. So there in itself is the affirmation of the principle that value is a driver in society. But at the moment, it's about a re-evaluation of value. And to quote the Stephanie, after all, a world upended by the global pandemic that raged amid an economic, political, environmental, and technological maelstrom is not the same world that existed a few years ago. And obviously, we're seeing a very different response to the drivers these particular days. What's important is to understand this particular research methodology. Jumping into page 5 here, and it says to understand what people value in a changing world, the study measures the broad set of explicit and implicit value levers, ranging from the value of something to me, to the value of something to the community, or to the world around me. And again, me being at the center of that proposition. And it looks at how people think about and prioritize these levers, and that particular principle is called value equations. So there are 5 levers of value that are covered in the article, Kevin. The first one here is monetary value. So it's about something I buy or do that is worth the money or investment. The second is functional value, something I buy or do that meets a personal need or practical need that I have. And interestingly, talking about meeting needs, 2 of our last conversations is really about understanding the ability to meet people's needs is going to be the hook for brands drawing those people in. The third here is emotional value, something I buy or do that gives me a positive feeling. The fourth value here, or at least lever of value, is societal value. And for me, it's interesting to see how societal value is sort of dropping down the ranks. It's something I buy or do that reflects with who I am or connects me with groups I want to be part of. And then finally, the fifth lever of value is, social value was the previous, societal is the fifth. It's something I buy or do that has a positive impact on the world beyond just a business or commercial importance to me. And measuring value and modeling the actions, what do global audiences say they value across the 5 levers? What company or brand actions do they feel best deliver that value? What kinds of trade-offs do people make when forced to choose between them? And those are the constructs that actually drive the levers of value in the research methodology. But importantly here is that 3 out of 4 people globally say that what they value has actually changed in the past 5 years, Kevin. And I don't know what you feel about in terms of the value drivers in your life, and have you seen a shift in those or felt a shift in those as well over the past 5 years?
Yeah, correct. I think even the purpose of the book, having written, the future of work is human, and considering, when you looked at what the pandemic, the kind of impact that the pandemic had into human behavior, humans' value systems also change, right? So the fact that you're breaking it down into monetary value, functional value, emotional values, social value, and societal value, you're starting to pick up the importance of what consumers out there actually want. And I think it's also shifting that narrative, which is a really good thing. So it's really re-looking at, like you mentioned earlier, like re-looking at value and what does that mean to consumers, at the end of the day, because And I've always been I always come from the point of view, if you're not adding value, then what the hell are you doing, right? And so you have to kind of like consider, what is the value here? Are people getting value out of it? And if they're not, then I don't want to do it. Like, it's like, well, then I don't want to do it. So I'm glad that that's part of the conversation, and I think consumers are driving this conversation, because we're going to get to some interesting things just now, which I saw.
Yeah, we definitely are, yeah. But interestingly, again, it's obvious. COVID-19 pandemic is the number one thing that changed what people value. Nobody can contest that at all. So, what people say they value today is markedly less social and societal, and fundamentally more personal. And for me, as I say, the last 5 years, seeing that, because many of the topics we've covered in the show over the past 2 years have really spoken about the importance of social and societal value in connecting with consumers and pushing your brand into that particular space. But it's really interesting to see how it's becoming fundamentally more personal. And the primacy of personal is an important point to understand. So for any value equation, for most any organization, Kevin, what we all know is that leaders must first and foremost deliver monetary and functional value for their shareholders, and it's as close to an immutable law as they come. An interesting statement that in defining this primacy of purpose. But as we now enter into the mid-2020s, the primacy of personal represents a new equation, part of that reevaluation proposition. And this is what defines what people value globally when we control for that baseline standard. So it's important for brands to understand what people say is a prioritization around these two areas of emotional value, both from a fundamentally personal nature in nature approach. And here, the first and most important statement is a concern for my own safety, security, happiness really stand out. These are the most intrinsic aspects of emotional value. Then the second and slightly lesser importance is a desire for brands to entertain and excite me and empower me. These are the emotional values that are more extrinsic. So the intrinsic emotional values, extrinsic personal emotional values are around entertainment. But then when it's not just about business, it's personal. So the implications of the new value equation are around understanding the 5 dimensions of this value equation. So page 13, and it talks about me over we. So we're going to look at the personal emotional value that is paramount to individuals. We then look at inside out, which is about my safety, security, and happiness above all else. Then it talks about societal tilts selfward. The good for the world starts with good for me and mine, and that really is the one I'm quite keen to unpack in more detail, because that's the one that's definitely flipped for me. Number 4, the dimension of social descending, social climbing, status or expressions matter less. And then the 5th one, important one, is taking action is a tightrope. Negative reaction now rivals positive support. So start with number 1. Me over we, and this personal emotional value is paramount. So the research notes that people say personal emotional value is the most important value contribution for any company or brand, and if they can go beyond this particular baseline positioning and deliver monetary and functional value, they're definitely going to be connecting with the audience. By contrast, of all the 5 levers that were measured in the report, societal or social value ranks absolutely last. And as I say, we always saw that as being number 1 and me coming down, but it's a total flip in this regard. And the insistence on me over we is a major factor underlying this concept of the primacy of personal value today, Kevin. 42% of people say that personal value is the most important type of value contribution a company or a brand can actually make. And twice as many provide personal emotional value is as important to either societal or social value for all generations. And so it's interesting, it's not just sitting at the Gen Z, the alphas, it goes all the way down to the boomers, where they're finding that personal value is twice as important as social or societal value, Kevin.
Right, but I just want to point out, like this is one of those one of the reasons that we understand that first off, this is pointing us in the direction of an actual value, so something I value, and that comes back to the person, it comes back to the human behavior, right? The human instinct, the human need that we have, and that's also why we saw the semigration and the migration to coastal areas and like the workforce changing to such a large degree, because the me has become like, what do I value? I don't want to lose my family in the pandemic. I want to spend time with my family, and people want a far greater work-life balance. So, they challenging the workforce at the moment. Kind of, I was reading a stat yesterday where people were saying people are actually, they would rather resign from a position at work than have to go back permanently to an office, right? And it's purely based on this me over we kind of concept, because it's like, I've seen the value of my time. I've seen the value of not having to sit in the traffic for 5 hours a day. Kind of like, I don't want to do that, right? And so it really does make sense from that perspective, that the value that I am, like, what is valuable for me is more important than what social constructs there are, or societal value.
What I find interesting about what you said, and this concept of reevaluation is the power of the re prefix. So redefine, reevaluate, resign, relocate. Really driving a lot of that construct, Kevin. The second lever here is the inside out proposition, and this is about my safety, security, health, and happiness above all else. And that talks very much to what you've just said. One of those key drivers coming out of the pandemic here, and topping the list is my safety, health, and happiness. This is as a result that underscores the fundamental personal nature of the emotional value people say that matters today. And the pandemic has definitely turned the value equation markedly inside out, and stands as the single greatest catalyst for bringing the re in again, reshaping what people say and value, Kevin. And the point here is the inside out drivers of emotional value are quite interesting here. Of primary importance is 23% note that makes me feel or secure or safe is their driver of emotional value. 22% say that it makes me feel healthier as their driver of emotional value. And 22% say it gives me joy and happiness as their driver of emotional value. Those being the three primary drivers. On the secondary scale of importance, 15% notes that entertains me as a driver of emotional value. 14% notes empowers me as the driver, and 14% notes excites me. So happiness, health, feel safe, secure at the one end, and entertains, empowers, and excites me as the secondary drivers there, Kevin.
But Craig, this also lends itself, and I think it speaks to the whole climate change thing, right? So my safety and security, health, and happiness above all else. It's like, do we, and this is part and parcel why we're seeing the millennials and the Gen Alphas and the generations moving up in the ranks from that position, coming and asking the question, well, do I live in a safe world? Is it safe for me to be here? Is it safe for me to be in this environment? And that narrative is overflowing into corporates all over the planet. And so people have to start considering it from it's becoming a bigger conversation than I think people realize.
That foundational stuff, actually, it is. It's that underlying construct is foundational conversation guiding the way that people are moving forward. The interesting thing here is this whole inside out proposition on page 21. It talks about my safety, security, and happiness in light of understanding younger audiences, and they're the most inside out generation, Kevin. And there's an interesting statement. It says that while every generation values personal safety, health, and happiness the most, Gen Z and millennials say they place higher importance on every facet of emotional value. For boomers, the only emotional value contribution that really counts, they say, is one that makes them feel healthier, which is expected, a feeling that actually grows more positive, not more negative, as people of age contrary to the common myth. So that's really interesting to see that the foundation of Feeling healthy is the key driver for boomers on one end, but the collective of safety, health, and happiness combined is what's driving the Gen Z and millennial spectrum here. 57%, in more than 57%, Gen Z are more likely to place greater importance on brands that excite them. So that's really important point for brands to understand. What are those levers and triggers that will get to drive excitement in the engagement with Gen Z?
Yeah.
Yeah, the third lever is societal tilts self-worth. So good for the world starts with good for me and mine. And as I said, this is the point that really fascinated me, because for years and years and years it was, again, good for the world, but now actually it's going, I'm putting myself at the front of this. And across generations around the globe, Kevin, people are saying that treats people well ranks as the most important societal value contribution a company or brand can actually make. Notably, topping treats the planet well. So there's the fact point there.
Yeah.
And the findings reveal that the notion of societal value has also tilted in a more selfward direction, with the statement, how me and mine are treated, how well, how fairly, how directly, ranks slightly higher importance than concerns for the broader world. In effect, feeling personally valued carries greater societal weight, Kevin. And here again, looking at primary and secondary importance, we see that the primary levers here are 25% note that treats people well as the primary driver, with the second of those primary drivers, 22% treats the planet well. See the big difference there. The secondary important levers here are 14% notes educates me and or others as a key point, 14% notes that supports issues I care about as a key point, and 13% note invests in communities as a key point. But again, those are secondary drivers, treats people well and treats the planet well being the primary drivers, Kevin.
Correct, but to me, if that's the primary importance, I'm like, well, hell, we're on the right road, right? We're on the right track here, because
yes,
I think if we look at the state of the world, it's about time that treating people well is at the forefront of the consideration of how you do life and do your business. But if you're not treating people well, like, you shouldn't be in business.
Yeah, absolutely. And the whole concept of diversity, equity, inclusion really plays perfectly well into this proposition, yeah, because that is about understanding people's needs and being able to treat them well in the construct of who they are, what they believe in, and how they act and behave.
Yeah, and I mean, Stephen from Clean Creatives, he's so passionate about what he does around the activism around getting people to understand the importance of treating the planet well, and
Yes,
like what agencies are actually supporting the fossil fuel or not.
fuel industries. Yeah,
So when you see it from people taking massive action in the way that they do, it's amazing. I'm all for it. And if we can support people on the shows and get them up here and say, let's treat people better and let's support the bloody planet. Let's do it. I love this.
Point 4, the lever 4, you're going to enjoy this, Kevin. It's social descending, and the whole concept of social climbing status or expression is beginning to matter less. And in today's new value equation, we're seeing that people overall say that it's less important for companies and brands to provide them with social value and status. The value of providing social value is therefore decreasing, and there's two key points to note here. So it's particularly true when people face trade-offs. Social value is the first thing they say that they are willing to give up, regardless of global region. So
Wow.
that's a beautiful leveling driver across the world. Across 5 value levers and 30 different value driving actions, increasing my social status ranks as the lowest, with only 7% of people choosing it as the most important. And that's just so reassuring. It really, really is. When faced to make trade-offs across all levers of value, social value becomes less than half important across all markets, Kevin.
But I mean, when we were children, we were this social value in itself was it was almost imprinted in us, like, like climbing the social ladder. And when you're part of the Joneses, and like that, you kind of feeling like, oh, okay, cool, my social status is really well looked after. But now, the fact that it's descending, and it's like, this is something that people are, which gives me a bit of peace of mind when it comes to my daughter, for example, because you're kind of going, if this is a descent in, understanding what humans are sort of moving towards, it gives me a bit of comfort that, peer pressure and social ascending and status and all of that is really not at the forefront of people's minds anymore, but rather like people and looking after the planet.
So to that point, absolutely. So overall, the concept of social status is descending. There's no doubt about it. It's descending faster and more effectively at the boomer end. Boomers, Gen X. It's still slow to get to that particular proposition from a Gen Z and millennial point of view, and still has some kind of importance for particularly those two younger generations. But really, again, it's about companies or brands providing social value that allows people to express themselves, that is definitely valued more by these younger generations. So not necessarily about placing them higher in the rankings, but just being effective in allowing these youngsters to express themselves better. And yeah, the points here, there's again five drivers within this particular value equation, and that gives me access to new experiences is probably the most important to Gen Z. So that's not a negative point. It gives me recognition or respect, most important, again, for millennials and Gen Z, again, not a negative point. So whilst the societal recognition, expression, belonging is still relatively important to younger generations, it isn't in the context of negative experience, Kevin. So yeah, good to see that there is a balancing out of this equation. Point 5 here is, what lever 5 is, taking action is a tightrope, and negative reaction now rivals positive support. So quite an interesting concept here. Almost all people globally today say they will take positive action when companies and brands align with what they personally value. However, as the research makes clear, people now say the opposite is also just as true. So if you conflict with what they value, people won't actually hesitate to punish you. And a brand that's punished is a brand that's not going to come back easy into the market. So when the upside and downside are equally precipitous, taking action resembles a tightrope. And it notes that this balancing act is real reputational consequence and requires knowing what your audiences do and don't value in a far more granular way. So really important for brands to understand that. And the positive and negative actions are measured out around this proposition. 90% say they will take positive action if a company helps them live what they value. 83% say they will take a negative action if a company conflicts with what they say or value. So 94% of Gen Z and 94% of millennials subscribe to they will take positive action. 88% amongst Gen Z note that they will take negative action. 50% will recommend to a family or friend. 43% will talk about that company. 39% will change their buying behavior habits and actually include that company. 52% will buy less from that company. 36% will tell people about their conflict with the company, and 30% will boycott a company. All this mix of the positive and negative action tightrope, Kevin.
Yeah, and when you explain it like that, it's quite the tightrope, Craig. It's you kind of like really have to be aware and be responsible.
Totally. The sort of mind the gaps drivers that the report has found makes some interesting statements here. Some in line, others are changing, and as one would imagine, the expectations are high to deliver societal value, 1.5 times higher than in the non-profit sector. For industries like financial, Monetary value is the most important, 1.3 times higher. The conventional wisdom doesn't always hold true. For example, we find that people give 15% less importance to monetary value within the healthcare and media entertainment sectors. But the single most important lever of value in travel, which is really great to see, is emotional value, this outstripping the levers of functional value in travel. So interesting position there, where these heart-taking experiences are actually overriding the head experience, so that emotional driver. There's a 15% decrease in the importance assigned to monetary value in healthcare, and for me that was quite an interesting proposition, because coming out of the pandemic, you would have thought that it would be a much higher lever there, but really it's that kind of entertainment aspect that is overriding some of those principles, Kevin. There's an interesting quote by Susan Howe, who's the president of the Weber Shandwick collective, who actually developed this research methodology, and it notes this: the old notion that emotion is just for consumer brands is past its expiry date. The old notion that emotion is just for consumer brands is past its expiration date. The emotional stakes are higher in so many industries and sectors right now because the personal stakes are so much higher too. In challenging economic and societal times, this isn't just soft stuff. Emotional drivers deliver hard and meaningful value. And it's really important for brands to get to unpack and understand those key emotional drivers across all of these 5 layers that we've experienced here, Kevin. And then just to look at the summary, and they really unpack it in a very succinct way here. The global study suggests that the primacy of purpose represents a new equation defining what people value globally at a time when 3 out of 4 say what they value has changed the most. And these 5 key drivers and dimensions help brands to understand how to connect with consumers and the importance of repositioning themselves to stay relevant in consumers' minds. So it's about me over we. Personal emotional value is the most important value contribution a company or brand can make after monetary and functional value. It's twice as important as societal or social value. It's about inside out. The value equation today is markedly inside out. The primary source of emotional value is my safety, security, health, and happiness. Gen Z and millennials place much higher importance on every facet of emotional value than any other generation. Societal tilts self-worth, treats people well, and by extension treats me well, universally rank as the most important societal value contribution, notably topping treats the planet well. Feeling personally valued now covers and carries much greater societal value today, Kevin. Social descending. People overall see less value in brands and products that provide social climbing, status, or expression, especially when facing the trade-offs. Still, Gen Z and millennials are placing more value and are motivated by social value than other generations, but that is declining. Taking action is a tightrope. 90% of people globally say that they'll take positive action when companies and brands align with what they value. And you and I started talking about this around the employee brand work that I'm doing, where brands, organizations whose values connect with the values of employees are the ones that are going to attract the right talent. 83% will also take negative action if it conflicts with what they believe in. And the balancing act is that real reputational consequences and requiring knowing your audience in more granular ways, Kevin. And then, the key insight here is mind the emotional gaps. And in some sectors, emotional gaps emerge by generations. Healthcare is delivering emotional value much higher for boomers, while under-delivering in the Gen Z millennial space, whereas technology is unable to meet the expectations of emotional value for older generations, and definitely aligning with the emotional value of younger generations, Kevin. Emotional value equation to value exchange. And I really like that, value exchange. So what we value as consumers, human beings, is central question for anyone in business and marketing and communications, which is to say the business of actually connecting, engaging with people in what they value in their lives, in the marketplace, and on platforms through their media. So for brands really to get to understand where are those value exchange touch points and what are the levers that they need to pull to ensure that it moves into this value exchange proposition, Kevin.
Craig, I love this, and I think, you know, and even with a summary, just going through it again, you know, it really does speak to, you know, if just as you were talking, going back to witnessing change of behavior that people were actually going through, where, you know, just out of COVID and the new way of working and the new way of running their business, and that the sentiment of like, what do I value? Do I, you know, because essentially, you know, before COVID, you know, people were like, yeah, you know, I value having social status and I value success. But after the pandemic, everything changed, and, you know, people were going, no, actually, I value my health, I value my parents, I value my family. You know, that the whole conversation has been re-looked at, and I'm so glad that it's, you know, it's got to this point where, you know, it's impacting how we actually do business, because it's giving us a whole new insight on how humans are going about consuming anything. And, you know, if I'm not speaking to them in their language, I'm probably going to fail at that.
And Kevin, you know, as the two statements at the end of the report, it notes that at its heart, it involves an exchange of value. And the beauty about this, it's a two-way street. Yeah, it's about a push and a pull, and it's not just a take. And the value exchange that's strongest, take note, is when it's earned, Kevin. When you earn a place in people's lives, not as the result of something you say, but something you do.
Absolutely, I love that. Craig, if you want to go find us, it's the From Value Exchange to Value Exchange, and where do we go find this information?
So Kevin, as noted, we'll definitely include a link in the article, but at least a link in the podcast. But this came from the fastcompany.com on the 11th of March. So if you go into fastcompany.com and actually type in the exclusive consumers are putting themselves first heading, you'll definitely see the report come to the fore.
Fantastic. And you know, I was looking at the quotes, the QOT for today, and looking at value, and you know, Albert Einstein knew best even then, because he said, try not to become a man of success, but rather become a man of value.
Oh, that's beautiful. Gosh.
Guys, please remember to like and share, and tune into the Lunchtime series every Wednesday and Thursday. For myself and Craig, have a fantastic week. Craig, thank you so much, and I will catch up with you next week.
Thank you, Kevin. Have a good one in between. Thanks.
Cheers.